Okay, with this many people in attendance, I would ask everybody to mute your microphones. So I'm Chairman Robert Leach. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. And in attendance, we have myself, Commissioner Darren Long, Commissioner Ray Mancuso, Commissioner Ed Filippone, Chief DeMarco, Deputy Chief Hart, Lieutenant Matt Carl, Sergeant Reimer.
Recording in progress.
Town Attorney Joshua Hawks Ladd. It's quite the list. And many members of the public. So moving on to added agenda items. I would entertain a motion to take item 11, and actually I should probably wait until I have everyone in the room. Chief, I don't know if you can see on your screen, do we have Sergeant Mcneese or Attorney Rommel in attendance?
I don't see them by name.
Yes,
There are a lot of identified. Oh, there they are. They are here.
called Big World for some reason in council forum.
So onto the agenda, I would entertain a motion to move item 11, executive session personnel matter, to item 3A, and a motion to move item 10, public input, to item 3B. Commissioners?
I move to amend the agenda to take up item 11, an executive session personnel matter under agenda item number 3A.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Commissioner Mancuso. So I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Filippone,
Aye.
Commissioner Mancuso.
Aye.
Unanimous. And can we get a motion to move item 10, public comments, under item 3B?
I'll make a motion to take 10A, public comment. You said into 3B?
Correct.
I'll second it.
Motion from Long, seconded by Mancuso. Any discussion? All those in favor, Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Philippone,
Aye.
Commissioner Mancuso.
Aye.
Unanimous. Next on the agenda is previous meeting minutes.
I will make the motion to accept the previous minutes.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second on previous meeting minutes of May 12th, 2021. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Philippone,
Aye.
Commissioner Mancuso.
Aye.
Unanimous again. Now we can move on to item 3A. And before I do that, I'll ask all the members in the audience to please mute your microphones. I think we're good. So the next agenda item is a pre-disciplinary hearing involving the police department member, Sergeant David Mcneese, pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes, Section 7-276, the collective bargaining agreement between the town and Afscme Council 4, Article 3, and the Town of East Windsor Policy Manual, which was referred to this commission by the police chief. This is scheduled to be heard in executive session. However, Sergeant Mcneese has the right to have the matter heard in public session. Sergeant Mcneese, are you present?
I would like it to be held in open session. Public session, sorry. Public session.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Sergeant.
We would like the matter held in public session. Can you hear us now?
Yeah. And just so I know when I'm looking at the screen and I'm trying to figure out who is who, whose device are you using?
We're at Council 4 in the large room. Is that what you're asking? What device are we?
Chairman,
Okay,
it's
so
labeled
big
as
room.
big room. Big room it's labeled as.
Okay, thanks. So just for clarification, Sergeant Mcneese, you've asked to hold this in public?
Yes, in public, please.
Okay. In that case, we'll begin the hearing. I would ask that a motion be made and seconded to commence the pre-disciplinary hearing into Sergeant McNeese's conduct as of March 7th.
I make the motion that the public hearing be held in public session as per the request of Sergeant McNeese and attorney.
I will second that motion.
Motion from Commissioner Philippone, second from Commissioner Long. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Philippone,
Aye.
Commissioner Mancuso.
Aye.
Unanimous. I've asked the town attorney, Josh Hawks Ladd, to represent the commission's interests tonight and handle the pre-discipline process. Attorney Hawks Ladd, would you please proceed?
Yes, just a quick sound check. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would the attorney for the union identify who else is in the room besides yourself and Sergeant McNeese?
Good evening, Kelly Rommel for the police union, I also obviously have Sergeant Mcneese, the Union President, Jeff Reimer, and Sergeant McNeese's wife, Shannon, is in the room as well, but is not on camera.
Thank you. All right, so as the commission knows, this is scheduled for a pre-discipline hearing in accordance with the commission's policies and Cleveland Board of Education versus Loudermill. This matter is limited to the commission providing Sergeant McNeese with an opportunity to be heard based on the allegations that the police department have lodged and have raised with this commission against him. What I'd like to do with the commission's permission is start by asking the police department representatives to explain why we're here, starting with Police Chief Edward DeMarco. So if I may proceed, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask to have Police Chief DeMarco explain why we're here and what it is he's looking for from the commission.
Please move ahead, Chief DeMarco.
Muted.
All right, I got it off mute now. We're good. So for the record, I'm Ed DeMarco, Chief of Police. I'd like to start with saying that on March 3rd, Wednesday of this year, I observed Sergeant David McNeese at the police department. He was having some difficulty walking and what appeared to be balancing himself. I could see that Sergeant McNeese was limping and maybe leaning to his side a little bit, and at times he appeared hunched over. At the time, Sergeant McNeese was in full uniform and he was assigned as a police officer or supervisor assigned to our evening shift that night. Out of genuine concern for his safety and his ability to perform his duties, I called Sergeant McNeese into my office and I spoke with him at length. I can tell you that this meeting did occur in the presence of Deputy Chief Hart. So I advised Sergeant McNeese what I clearly observed regarding his physical condition and what my concerns were. Sergeant McNeese did have past injuries to his back and was pending a surgery for this injury. And that surgery was supposed to be in the very near future. And in that meeting, Sergeant McNeese did admit that he was in pain and having some difficulty functioning, although he said he was still trying to run and stretch and work out, but that he was having some difficulty. So we talked about that, and I fully explained that I was afraid that his condition would place him, other police officers, and the public in serious jeopardy, that he couldn't do his job. I told Sergeant McNeese that his poor physical condition and possible inability to perform those duties safely was placing everyone at risk. Sergeant McNeese told me he understood, and during our meeting, he chose from several options that we had discussed to ultimately enter our alternative duty program. It's light duty is what I'm talking about. Several times in that meeting, I clearly gave Sergeant McNeese verbal orders and instructions, most importantly, not to perform the duties of a full-time sworn police officer while he was on light duty. I explained that his weakened physical condition was a severe risk to him and others and to the community. Throughout this meeting, Deputy Chief Hart also gave several clear verbal orders to Sergeant McNeese about light duty status and not to perform any duties of a fully sworn officer. At the conclusion of that meeting, there was no doubt about the orders, about our concerns, and about the instructions given to Sergeant McNeese. The next day on Thursday, March 4th, Deputy Chief Hart followed up these orders with written notification to Sergeant McNeese about this alternative duty and what actions he could and could not take. Among other things, this notification clearly stated that Sergeant McNeese shall not perform the full duties of a sworn member of the police department. Then on Friday, March 5th, I made yet another follow-up telephone call to Sergeant McNeese from my cell phone to his cell phone. I spoke to Dave for several minutes and we discussed what was said previously in our meetings on the 3rd, and we discussed his situation. I wanted to check on Dave's well-being as well as make sure that he fully understood my orders and instructions. During that telephone call, I again told Mcneese, you are not to perform the full duties of a sworn police officer. I went on to highlight my concerns in that conversation for his safety as well as others because of his condition. On that call, Sergeant Mcneese told me that he understood my orders, that he actually agreed with my decision, and that he was suffering physically and he was in pain, and that he really did appreciate my follow-up call from me. Then on March 7th, Sergeant Mcneese intentionally and willfully violated my orders and potentially committed a host of serious policy violations, including insubordination, placing himself, other police officers, and the public at serious risk. Due to the significance of his actions and the potential serious violations, I had the matter internally investigated. I actually ordered Lieutenant Matt Carl to conduct this investigation. As some of the details of the investigation emerged, and I learned about some of the alarming actions and then the disturbing statements made by Sergeant Mcneese afterwards in a statement in an interview with Lieutenant Carl, I realized that this matter may require a referral for a pre-disciplinary hearing before the East Windsor Police Commission. As you all know, per the collective bargaining agreement, I'm only allowed to discipline an employee for up to 10 suspension days. So part of the internal affairs interview and during a meeting later about the incident, Sergeant Mcneese stated that he did not believe he was insubordinate, and in fact, he accepts no responsibility for his actions thus far. At one point, Sergeant Mcneese said he did not receive a ton of guidance, and he attempted to portray confusion about our policy, even though he was given numerous oral, written, and then follow-up orders by cell phone and clear instruction from myself and Deputy Chief Hart. In his interview with Lieutenant Carl, Sergeant Mcneese said that by the end of the following week, he couldn't even walk anymore. That's how bad it was or had gotten, but he was still trying to block it out. So Sergeant Mcneese willfully and knowingly violated my clear and concise verbal and written orders and our alternative duty policy. On March 7th, he did in fact perform the duties of a full-time sworn police officer, contrary to that policy and contrary to the direct orders, and he placed himself, another police officer, and the community at risk. He left the police department. He entered a marked police car. He traveled at speeds of up to 109 miles an hour without his emergency lights or sirens on to apprehend a known suspect who entered Massachusetts. Because this was a known suspect, Sergeant Mcneese had no urgent reason to engage in this reckless behavior. We must also consider that although it was a domestic violence, it was an incident that involved only property damage thus far. He then brought this suspect back to Connecticut in violation of proper procedure. Sergeant Mcneese, while physically weakened, in need of back surgery, and not in uniform or carrying any of the appropriate equipment, and while not deploying his body camera, which are all required by our policy and some are even required by the Connecticut Police Accountability Act, he knowingly violated our policies. He clearly placed himself and others and the public in danger. And Sergeant Mcneese did all of this, according to his interview, because as he put it, on May 11th in that interview, he did not want to be perceived as a baby. In that interview, Sergeant Mcneese describes that his supervisor, or actually his old police chief at Southern Connecticut State University, absolutely despised light duty, and I think that set a tone for Sergeant Mcneese. He was also telling a story in that interview that his old chief told him that sometimes you can maybe not follow an order in order to catch a suspect. You just say you didn't hear it. I can tell you this, that the East Windsor Police Department or all of its members does not and will not operate in that manner. My concern is this, that Sergeant Mcneese does not recognize the level of wrongdoing that he has committed, or any of the wrongdoing for that matter, if you read his interview. He lacks any contrition, he deflected, he does not accept responsibility for his actions, nor did he learn anything from his actions. So I can only be left to assume that Sergeant Mcneese will do this again, to commit these types of serious violations, that it will place himself and others at risk. as he stated in his interview, if he feels that he is right. As a police chief who is committed to the safety of everyone who works at our police department, and I'm responsible to my community, I must consider the sergeant's actions, his statement and words afterward, the risk he posed, and the fact that we're in an era of police reform and accountability. Our community and society wants, they actually demand that we as public police officers follow reasonable orders and policy, and that we be held accountable for our actions. With these considerations and others forefront in my mind, it is my strong belief that this matter is above my allowable level of discipline as contained in the collective bargaining agreement. So tonight, you'll be presented with the facts and the circumstances of this incident. You'll also hear, see, and read some of the words and actions of Sergeant Dave Mcneese. And with that, I was left with no choice. For the protection of safety of everyone I mentioned, our police officers, the community we serve, I had to refer this matter to the East Windsor Police Commission for a pre-disciplinary hearing.
Thank you, Chief. Before you turn your mic off, I just want to clarify, you assigned Lieutenant Matthew Carl to investigate Sergeant Mcneese's conduct?
Yes, I did.
And what did Lieutenant Carl do in response to your order?
He conducted a thorough investigation, including gaining video, audio, taking statements and interviews, and highlighting Sergeant Mcneese's response to what had occurred on the 7th.
And interviewed Sergeant Mcneese as well, is that right?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And so the quotes that you gave in your opening, did those come from Sergeant Mcneese from his interview with Lieutenant Carl?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to have Lieutenant Carl, I'd say step forward, but make sure that he's unmuted on his mic, and like to ask him a few questions.
Sure. Lieutenant Carl?
All right.
Good evening, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
So Lieutenant Carl, let me just start by making an introduction for the union, who is, I'm sure they know you, but explain to the commission what happened after Police Chief DeMarco instructed you to do an internal affairs investigation. I'd like you to describe what you did, summarize what you did, and then I'd like you to go into your investigation, the steps of the investigation, and what you learned, and then I'll probably have some questions for you.
Sure. So upon being assigned the internal investigation, I took some time to review the police department dashboard camera of 1904 and collected as evidence. It's a WatchGuard 4RE. I also secured the body camera of Officer Walsh, the Vista. I secured the video for Officer Gonzalez for a body camera, and also Officer Walsh's 4RE indoor dashboard camera. I conducted a review of the department RMS, records management system, NextGen, and asked the records manager to give me a copy of the police report filed on the evening of March 7th, connected with this investigation. There was 2 of them, and I also obtained a copy of the daily transmittal after the suspect was arrested, and I was brought to court the next day. I reviewed internal department cameras and audio logs. After I put all that together, I started an investigation into what my findings were.
Okay, thank you. And what was the primary focus of your investigation? Tell the commission what you did, how you did it, and then what your results were.
Well, the subject of the investigation was Sergeant Dave Mcneese, a 16-year veteran of East Windsor Police Department. Sergeant Mcneese began his career with the East Windsor Police Department in June of 2004. He was promoted to the rank of corporal in May of 2010. Excuse me. And then again to sergeant in July of 2012. I reviewed the documents and all the evidence that took place on March 7th while Sergeant Mcneese was on alternate duty. So basically, how this transpired was on the evening of March 7th, Sergeant Mcneese called me on my department-issued cell phone while I was off duty and at home and informed me what had occurred. I advised him that I would notify the administration in the morning, Monday, March 8th. On Monday, March 8th, when I got the internal investigation, I started to put the documents together and look at the evidence that I previously mentioned. So in summary, on March 7th, while on alternate duty status due to an on-job injury, Sergeant Mcneese intentionally and willfully violated a direct order of the Office of Chief of Police while he was assigned to alternate duty program by entering an East Windsor Police Department marked line cruiser and proceeded to use the cruiser to apprehend a suspect, or excuse me, a subject of the police investigation. CFS.
So Lieutenant Carl, let me just interrupt you for 1 second, because I know that you're looking at a document. Is this, you said in summary, is this something that you drafted?
It is.
Okay, so is this part of your internal affairs investigation?
It is.
This is your formal summary of your internal affairs investigation?
It is.
And you provided this to Sergeant Mcneese and his representatives, right? Or the administration did?
I did.
Before you go any further, because there are some things I just want to make sure that the commission understands. You started out with the fact that that Sergeant Mcneese was placed on alternative duty, right? Can you describe or explain to the commission what alternative duty means and whether there's a specific policy in place regarding alternative duty?
Sure. So alternative duty is a duty assignment you have here if you become injured on the job or off the job. There's a policy in place that clearly states what you can do, how long you can be on alternative duty, and what the parameters are. They're slightly different for on-the-job injury versus off-the-job injury, and there's also a section of it for maternity leave on there. So part of the on-the-job injury alternative duties that you could come back to work in a limited capacity, and you're not allowed to do any of the duties of a full-time sworn police officer.
And this is a written policy?
It is a written policy.
And is every police officer supposed to know the policy?
Yes, the policies are provided on a system called Power DMS, and the officers all have access to it, and they sign off and read the policy.
Do you have a copy of the alternative duty policy in front of you?
I do not.
All right, I have a copy. Just to refresh your recollection, do you know, and I think it's in your report, it's on page 3 of your report, if you have that in front of you.
I do.
Okay. Just pointing you to that policy, which is from Chapter 22, Section 4, Alternative Duty Program. This policy specifically says, and I'll quote it for you, that well, the quote's not yet. An officer who's placed on alternative duty program, quote, shall not perform the full duties of a sworn member of the police department, end quote. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
And Sergeant Mcneese, as a sergeant, is he a supervisor?
Yes, he is.
So he's charged with knowing this policy, right?
Yes, he is.
Is there any doubt in your mind that this policy is clear and unambiguous, that an officer assigned to alternative duty shall not perform the duties of a sworn member of the police department? Any doubt?
No doubt whatsoever.
All right. And it was this same alternative duty program that Police Chief DeMarco, the commanding officer of the department, placed Sergeant Mcneese on, right?
Correct.
All right. Okay. I just wanted to get that clear. All right. You can so, and I interrupted your flow. You were telling us what happened on the day of March 7th. And just so the commission picks up on everything, take your time and make sure, you know, they get everything, and they may have some questions as well. Go ahead.
Sure. So where I left off, Sergeant Mcneese left the East Windsor Police Department and drove to I-91 northbound exit 45, traveling at speeds up to and including 109 miles an hour without activation of his vehicle's audible, siren, or illuminated emergency lights. He proceeded northbound until he was able to catch a motor vehicle occupied what was believed to be the suspect in a recent domestic-related disturbance. In addition, this suspect was known to have an active warrant for his arrest held by the East Windsor Police Department for violation of protective order, a felony. Sergeant Mcneese also failed to activate the patrol vehicle's in-car dashboard camera system. It was determined that at the time Sergeant Mcneese initiated this action, the police department was aware of the identity of the suspect in this incident. That there was no reported injuries for any victims associated with the incident, making this a property crime, although domestic violence related. And the agency already had an active warrant for his arrest from a prior altercation. Sergeant Mcneese, upon locating the vehicle, activated his emergency lights and stopped the vehicle along I-91, the right shoulder of the roadway, approximately 0.2 of a mile over the Connecticut state line and into Massachusetts. Sergeant Mcneese called for backup unit and approached the operator of the vehicle, which was later determined to also be transporting the suspect in question in the front passenger seat. At the time of the stop, Sergeant Mcneese, assigned to alternate duty, was not wearing an official East Windsor Police uniform. Additionally, Sergeant Mcneese was not equipped with a department portable radio, handcuff, body-worn camera, nameplate, or identification affixed to the outermost garment of his uniform. Sergeant Mcneese approached the motor vehicle equipped only with his assigned duty firearm and department badge attached to his belt. Sergeant Mcneese was dressed in plain clothes and had no other official police markings except for his issued police badge. Upon arrival of a backup unit, Officer Sean Walsh, Sergeant Mcneese advised Officer Walsh that passenger in the vehicle was a suspect in the question and was taken into custody. The suspect was taken into custody by Officer Walsh with the assistance of Sergeant Mcneese because the suspect became verbally resistive and argumentative. Sergeant Mcneese ordered the arrest and return of the suspect back to the East Windsor Police Department from an out-of-state location, which is a violation of interstate custody policy per the court system and a possible violation of law. Additionally, Sergeant Mcneese was found to violate many policies and procedures regarding the safety of the department personnel and civilians we serve.
All right, thank you for that summary. I have some questions, but before I ask those questions, do you have some video of the incident at question that the commission can view?
I do.
So I know that Zoom, we've been doing this for over a year now, but I'd like you to play the video that you have. However, to the extent that we have any technological problems, just be ready to pause and rewind if necessary. But if you could play the video and narrate for the commission what it is that you're showing to them, starting with wherever you're starting.
So the first, just to narrate before I get started, the very first video that you'll see is Sergeant Mcneese's vehicle operated by Sergeant Mcneese traveling 91 northbound. On the bottom of your screen, I made it available that you'd be able to see the speeds, the time Officer Sergeant Mcneese brakes, and activation of any lights. So bear with me. I'm going to share my screen now, and let me know if you see the actual screen.
Yeah, it's starting to share.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see the main screen at this point.
Okay, hold on 1 second. I got to share the sound, and got to change some of the settings so that you could hear.
Okay. Take your time.
First of all, can you see the screen?
Yes, that's good. And it's
And
loud. It's loud enough. Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh yeah, before you hit go, hang on 1 second. Tell the commission. I just saw the sign exit 49. So this is exit 49, Enfield, Connecticut, on I-91.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
And
is.
this is Sergeant Mcneese's the car that he took from the department, driving on I-91 north while he's in plain clothes. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, go ahead. Just hold it a second. Hold it a second. When he passed that truck, he was going between 101, between 95 and 101 miles an hour?
That is true. You can see the speed in the bottom left corner of your screen, if that's visible to you.
I see it. I see it. Right now, he's going 98 miles an hour when he just passed that truck. And just so I'm clear, he didn't have any lights on?
No lights and no siren.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. Thank you. Can you pause it for a minute? Are his lights are his lights on now?
Yes, on the bottom center part of the screen, you can see the green light up where the brakes were on. His lights came on just a little bit prior to the sign that says "Welcome to Massachusetts."
So before you continue, did Sergeant Mcneese turn on the camera in the car when he started driving?
No, he did not.
Why is the camera on now?
The camera activates on a default setting at a certain speed. The camera automatically turns on. There's certain things that will trigger it. A motor vehicle crash. If you slam a door too hard, it believes it's in a motor vehicle crash. If you activate your lights and sirens, or a certain speed will trip the camera to turn on.
And what's that speed?
I believe the speed was set at 85 miles an hour. The way we tracked the speed prior to this was another internal system that we use from our next gen, our CAD, called the AVL. And that's how we were I was able to track his speed from the time he left the station, drove out Main Street, took a left or a right on Bridge Street, and then a left on 91. But we didn't have the actual video of that until this video camera activated.
Well, activated automatically, not by his choice.
Correct.
And what was the maximum speed that you tracked, or the camera tracked, or the software tracked Sergeant Mcneese going at on I-91 on this day?
The maximum speed I have him from the AVL is 109 miles an hour, and that was from 11 data points off of hitting off of towers.
With no lights or siren on at that time?
No lights or sirens.
Okay. All right, go ahead. Thank you.
So finishing this video out, you'll see where he conducts the last stop.
So that's the suspect's car that pulled over?
That is.
Okay, thank you.
So the next vehicle, or you would like to see more video?
Yeah, sure. Let's see the story. Let the commission see what happened here.
All right, so then you could clearly see in that video where he crosses over into Massachusetts. I pulled that video. So the entire video was recorded and provided to the commissioners, but I just took, for the instance of time, I just took clips of it. Would the commissioners like to see the part where he passes into Massachusetts? Or are you comfortable with that on that video?
Let's ask the chairman.
At this point, but I'm sorry, Attorney Hawks.
I was going to say, I want the chairman to make the decision since you're the chairman of this meeting. So go ahead.
I'm comfortable with it. It's, we know where we're at this point, so.
Okay, so the next video you'll see is Sergeant Mcneese's approach to the car. It's the first approach he makes to identify himself, believed to identify himself, and notify the occupants of the vehicle what's happening.
Excuse me for 1 second. Would it make a difference if the union stipulated to the facts? I mean, I understand the speeds are a matter of record, but, and that you wanted to show the commission the speeds, but if the union and the member is going to stipulate the fact that he's not in uniform, these are undisputed facts. So just for the interest of the commission, we have no issue stipulating to these to not show the video of things that we agree did actually happen.
So I appreciate the offer, Attorney Rommel. I think at this time, we're just going to allow Lieutenant Carl to present the facts that he used in making the conclusions that he made in his IA report. And I believe that these videos are part of that. Am I right, Lieutenant Carl?
They are.
So I think I appreciate the offer, Attorney Rommel, but I think, let me just ask Lieutenant Carl, what's the total amount of time these videos will take?
So I have the three approaches that Sergeant Mcneese makes to this vehicle, and then the last one is the confrontation with the suspect himself, clearly redacted, and that one itself is about 2 minutes. So the other videos go fairly quickly, except for that 1 2-minute one.
All right, then why don't you proceed? Thanks for the offer, Attorney Rommel, but I'm going to allow Lieutenant Carl to proceed.
So this one here, just to reiterate, is Sergeant Mcneese's approach to the vehicle.
Can you stop it a second? Any idea why his hand would be in his pocket?
No, from an officer safety point, I do not have an idea why.
Is he supposed to be approaching from the driver's side or passenger side on I-91?
Well, that's left up to the individual officer, or in this case, Sergeant Mcneese. So it's an individual thing.
Okay, go ahead.
So there's no sound because he's not wearing his body camera, so we can't hear what's actually being said.
So let's stop that a second. This is March 7th, 2021. Sergeant Mcneese is in plain clothes, and he has no body camera.
Correct.
Isn't there a law relating to wearing body cameras as of March 7th, 2021?
Well, we had a policy. The law is not in place yet for the accountability, but we had a policy procedure that was already in place that we were wearing body cameras at this time.
So he violated that policy.
Correct.
All right, go ahead.
And based off of this video, it led me to ask Sergeant Mcneese whether he was wearing his handcuff. He had a portable radio, and those types of things that would be normally on his duty belt, which he concluded he did not.
He didn't have handcuffs.
He did not.
So he approaches a suspect vehicle in order to apprehend a suspect with no handcuffs.
Correct.
While he's awaiting back surgery.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Now there's no audio because he doesn't have a body camera.
Correct.
Okay. We have no idea what he's saying to them.
That is correct. I did ask him, and he gave me an account in his interview. So the next video you'll see, it's a similar approach to the vehicle, but this time Officer Walsh is there.
Anything of import regarding this video?
No, just the hands in the pocket. And again, doesn't have any of his protective equipment on or portable radio.
Okay.
And lastly, for Sergeant Mcneese's vehicle camera is the when they actually take the suspect into custody.
Do you know the race of the suspect?
It's a black male.
Thank you.
Objection, I would just move to strike that. I'm not sure what the relevance is to that question.
I would sustain that as chairman.
Okay. So at that point, the suspect begins to struggle. Stop right there. And Sergeant Mcneese has to join Officer Walsh in order to ensure that the suspect can be handcuffed. Is that right?
Yeah, he was verbally resistive. He was protesting the arrest, and you can hear that in the next video I'll show you. And I believe Sergeant Mcneese in his interview felt that he just wanted to let the suspect know that he was there assisting Officer Walsh, and that the two of them could control them better.
And just to remind the commission, Sergeant Mcneese is on light duty due to a severe back injury that required surgery soon after this incident, and he's engaging in this type of behavior. Just to remind the commission. Go ahead. Thank you.
And so finally, to tie it all together, I have Sergeant Walsh's body camera. Just to set the stage, he traveled to this location and we clipped it at the point where there's a conversation between Officer Walsh and the suspect in the vehicle. And that is basically the suspect is protesting the stop, and Sergeant Walsh is determining that he's involved in this incident. And then the video starts at the point where Officer Walsh asks him to get out of the car. And there's audio here, so let me know if you can't hear it.
I didn't do anything.
Just go stand over here.
Warrant with us anyway, so
You hear that?
you get a warrant for violation of a protected order. So we already have one, so whatever happened today doesn't even matter. So
What do you mean a warrant for violation of protected order for how?
you have
Jordan,
a protected order, there's a warrant for it. So
For what though? How when was a warrant
Jordan.
issued?
I don't know.
just put your hands behind your back and we're gonna figure it out when we get back to the.
But wait a minute,
Jordan.
you have to tell me what's going on. You can't just
You
pull me
have-
over.
you have
I'm
an
in
arrest warrant.
Massachusetts.
No.
I'm in Massachusetts. First of all, you
Jordan,
can't. Wait a minute.
Jordan,
wait a minute,
don't
wait a
lock
minute,
up your
wait a
arm.
minute,
Under
wait a
arrest.
minute. Wait a minute.
You're
Wait a
under
minute,
arrest.
bro. Yo,
you
call
right now.
my mom. Call my mom, bro. Call my mom, bro.
Jordan,
Call my
relax.
mom.
Relax.
Bro, they are arresting me in Massachusetts, bro.
He's
Call
under
my
arrest.
mom, bro.
We have a warrant
Call
for his
my
arrest.
mom, bro. Call my mom. I think a warrant.
Yep.
For what? I just spoke. Yo, listen.
I'm telling you, we have a warrant for your arrest.
413-727-4429. Yo, to give him the phone that's in my back pocket, please.
Relax.
Can you give him the phone that's in my back pocket, please? Can you give him?
It's right there. It's right
Yo,
there.
Yeah, I got
bro, they are arresting me in Massachusetts. I'm not even in Connecticut. I'm not even in Connecticut, bro. What warrant are you guys talking about? Yo, go to my mom's house, bro, and tell her what's going on, bro. Because this is some bullshit. This is bullshit, bro.
I'll put it on.
This is bullshit. Like, dude, I'm coming from the hotel. I'm coming from Roadway Inn, bro. What is anybody talking about? Now you guys talking about you have a warrant for my arrest? So what is it? Was I at Mill Pond Road or do I have a warrant for my arrest?
Both.
How? How do I have a warrant for my arrest?
Let me just pat him down first.
I gotta get that phone. So
Yeah.
I want him to have the phone.
I want him to have that phone because I want him to go through my phone and call my mom. Because this doesn't make no sense. What are you guys talking about? I have a warrant for my arrest.
You have a warrant in East Windsor.
So that's the conclusion of the videos.
All right, why don't you take it off the video screen? I have some questions for you. Let me know when you're ready.
Is it off screen?
Yes, you're good. You're good.
Yep.
Okay, so I have your entire IA report. The union has it. I believe Mr. Chairman, the commission has Lieutenant Carl's IA report, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to, I don't want you to have to read it into the record. Everyone has it. I want to ask you some questions. Some of it may be a little bit repetitive because we covered some of it as you were describing the videos, but I just want to synopsize your IA report for the commission.
Okay.
First, Sergeant Mcneese, while on alternate duty, was not supposed to leave the building to apprehend suspects. Is that right?
Correct.
And that's a violation of department policy that he did.
Correct.
Okay. He was in plain clothes, did not have a protective vest, a body camera, or handcuffs, right?
Correct.
That violated department policy.
Yes, it did.
Okay. He went into a police cruiser and pursued the suspect driving over 100 miles an hour, at times 109 miles an hour, without lights or sirens on.
Correct.
Did that violate department policy?
Yes, it does.
The suspect he was pursuing had vandalized some property, right?
Correct.
He wasn't being accused of murder, mayhem, or any physical harm or violence at that time, this suspect, right?
No, at the time, there was no physical injury to any parties. This was a property crime.
I'm going to ask, okay, thank you. So Sergeant Mcneese did he pursue the suspect, or what was the nature of what he was doing, going after the suspect who committed vandalism of an apartment? Was this a hot pursuit?
Well, no, so my investigation revealed that one of the officers that was back at the location of the incident in Mill Pond Village was in contact with a vehicle following the suspect vehicle. They knew where the vehicle was. So Sergeant Mcneese was able to monitor the radio transactions from this officer, telling the other on-duty officers where the vehicle was. So when Sergeant Mcneese...
Wait, hang on one second, because we're getting some feedback from a participant who hasn't muted, I think. I don't think it's you or me. Unless it's you, is your audio still possibly going? Because we're getting a lot of feedback.
No, it's not me.
Okay. I think it's good. Okay, I think we're good now. I'm sorry. Can you repeat what you said? I couldn't hear you.
Sure. So, so one of the officers was still out at the scene in Mill Pond Village and was on a telephone with a witness following the vehicle. And Sergeant Mcneese was able to monitor radio transactions and know exactly where the vehicle was. So it was basically relayed from one of the officers on the scene to the other officers that were on the road. Sergeant Mcneese, when he entered the vehicle, he had a destination of where he was going. So knowing that he was behind the suspect vehicle, behind in distance, he entered 91, and I believe that was the reason for his speed.
Okay. Now, this suspect was known to the East Windsor Police Department, right?
Correct.
So was there any reason why you just couldn't catch them later, get a warrant for this vandalism, this destruction of property, and catch them later?
Objection, that calls for speculation.
This isn't a court case. This is a Loudermill hearing. Mr. Chairman, you can make a ruling on it, but objections are not warranted. And it's a fair question as to whether or not this suspect needed to be pursued in any fashion.
That calls for
Go ahead.
speculation. Whether someone needed to be pursued, do we know the suspect was going to be planted at a certain location, waiting with his arms up to be arrested?
Mr. Chairman, it's up to you, but you're muted. Mr. Chairman, you're muted. Chief, maybe you could unmute him because you're the host. I don't know. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go, I think. All right, there we go.
So to your question, what I was trying to say.
Mr. Chairman, we're having audio and video problems with you. I think he's locked now, so I have a feeling he's going to need to reboot. But Chief, you're still the co-host?
I am.
All right. Well, let's just wait a few minutes because I have a feeling that Chairman Leach is going to have to reboot.
Yes, please.
He's coming back in now.
My apologies.
It happens. Soon this will all be live and in person, but it happens. So, Mr. Chairman, I think
Yes.
Attorney Rommel objected to my question about whether or not Sergeant Mcneese had to pursue this suspect or could have waited, and she objected to that. And I think you were going to make a ruling on that.
Yes, I would let the question stand, actually. I believe it is relevant to what was happening on that date at this time. And I believe it's relevant as to the actions of Officer Sergeant Mcneese.
All right. So, Lieutenant Carl, can you answer my question?
What was the question again?
Was there any reason for Sergeant Mcneese to chase after this suspect when he was a known felon?
So the determination to apprehend anybody is based on a set of facts and circumstances at the time that, you know, are hard to determine. You have to weigh them out. So I can't speak to what Sergeant Mcneese was thinking. I asked him his mindset at the time of his interview, which we can get into later. But any officers, I can't testify on behalf of what they're thinking. But if you weigh out the determine the severity of the crime, your location to where they are, factors of whether they're known, whether they're wanted, whether they're dangerous. All those take into play. You got to take into consideration on what you actually do.
All right, thank you. So now, after pursuing the suspect, he pulled the vehicle over, and there were two persons in the car, not just the suspect, right?
Correct.
And with two occupants, is there a higher level of danger?
Well, there always is on a motor vehicle stop. It's one of the most dangerous things we do. This is a motor vehicle stop with a known felon who's basically been involved in a domestic-related incident, which are three of the most dangerous things that police officers can do. It's occupied 2 times, and he's by himself. So yes, there is a degree of risk.
All right. And we saw that Sergeant Mcneese was involved in ensuring that the suspect could be handcuffed, even though he was on alternative duty, right?
Yes.
Now, you played the video of the suspect yelling at them, "I'm in Massachusetts, bro. I'm in Massachusetts. What are you doing?" What's the significance of that?
Well, so in Massachusetts, if you can't arrest you can't effect an arrest in Massachusetts. You certainly can't serve a warrant. So this suspect is protesting the fact that he's in Massachusetts and can't be brought back to Connecticut. He can't be taken into arrested in Massachusetts if a Connecticut officer doesn't have authority there. And there's a process called it's a 2-state process where the courts get together, and the charge in Massachusetts would be fugitive from justice, and a Massachusetts authority would have to take the person into custody, and there would be a conversation between the 2 courts of whether Connecticut would extradite him and bring him back to Connecticut to stand charges.
So in fact, our U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 2, provides that a person charged in one state and found in another state cannot be brought back except on demand of the executive authority of the same state from which he fled. You familiar with that?
Correct, yes.
So by taking this suspect from Massachusetts without the governor of Connecticut's authority, he violated U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 2, right?
Correct. And in our in our policy procedure, we don't affect arrests outside of the state of Connecticut.
Now, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but when you questioned Sergeant Mcneese about how far into Massachusetts he was, what did he say?
He believed in his interview he was he estimated about 100 yards.
And how far was he really?
According to GPS and the investigation, my investigative efforts determined he was about 2/10 or 1,000, about 1,000 feet into.
Now, under the fugitive from, you said fugitive from justice, or fugitive from justice doctrine. Does it matter whether a suspect is 100 yards, 1,000 yards, or 10 miles into a foreign state?
Does not.
Did Sergeant Mcneese say anything when you questioned him about that, about why he did what he did?
I asked him in his interview, and he was able to recall back from his experience and old memos that were issued by GA-13, the governing court in our area back in the day, many, many years ago. You know, I felt, and I wrote in my report, that he struggled to articulate that he had a strong knowledge of the fugitive from justice or hot pursuit into another state. And he did indicate in his interview that after he thought about it more and researched it, he knew the proper thing to do was to call the authorities and have him taken into custody in Massachusetts.
In fact, when he came back to the East Windsor police station, did he say something to the dispatcher about his behavior?
When I interviewed dispatcher Marshall, who was the on-duty dispatcher at the time, he indicated verbally to dispatcher Marshall that he thought that he would be in trouble for his actions. And dispatcher Marshall wasn't sure exactly the verbiage, but that was a paraphrase of Sergeant Mcneese's wording.
And when he called you that night, what did he say?
It was similar, that he explained what he had done and thought that he might have gotten himself in trouble.
Okay. And as a sergeant, Sergeant Mcneese should have known the law that applied in this situation, shouldn't you?
I believe he should have.
Okay. So you found in your investigative report that Sergeant Mcneese violated various directives, policies, and laws. Would you just tell the commission what you found?
Sure. So I concluded that Sergeant McNeese's actions on March 7th violated the following department operational directives. Chapter 26, Section 4, insubordination. Section 5 of Chapter 26, negligent duty, specifically 5.05, 5.23, and 5.24. He was also in violation of Chapter 22, Section 4, alternate duty program. That was Section H of that. And Chapter 41, Section 5, emergency vehicle operation and response. Chapter 41, patrol. Section 61, in-car dash camera, body worn cameras. And Chapter 74, legal process, Section 5, arrest processing procedures. And Chapter 41, patrol, uniform, Section 20, uniform regulations.
And that's in addition to any laws that he may have violated, be it the U.S. Constitution or state law regarding driving, and whether he violated the police accountability bill, which is law now, but you said that the camera aspect of it is not yet law?
Correct.
Okay. So you found upwards of 9+ policy violations by this sergeant who has been employed by the department for going on 16 years. Is that right?
Yes.
Did Officer Mcneese explain to you why he did what he did?
Well, Sergeant Mcneese, when I interviewed him, a lot of my interview was about the mindset, and he explained to me that he knew that he had read the DOD for alternative duty, and that he felt at the time that he was okay, that the policy was vague or didn't give a ton of direction. Specifically, I quoted a couple of quotes in my investigative report. And then he referred to incidents that happened at his previous employment over 16 years ago while he was on duty, and a couple of incidents that had happened in town were really what his explanation of why he did what he did.
And what did he explain? What did he say? Why did he do what he did? What did he tell you?
The gist of it was after explaining an incident when he was in his prior employment where he followed an order to terminate a pursuit and the person got away. He then followed up with an incident where he violated an order and was able to apprehend, I believe it was an active shooter down in the New Haven area. And then up here, he talked about a couple incidents that I was aware of that happened in town. And the gist of what he had said in his interview, which is in his transcript, was that he would rather not go back to the people that he had as officers that work for him, and that he would be they would consider him a baby. Then he would rather go to the administration of a police department and explain to him what he did than to be accountable to his patrol officers.
That he felt that he would be viewed as a baby by complying with departmental policy and law.
Correct.
Okay. Just 1 minute. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Lieutenant Carl?
No, they have my investigative report. If they want to ask me any questions, I can do my best.
Okay. I'm going to let the union ask whatever questions when they go. I'm just going to finish presenting the case for the department, if the chairman so allows. I just have a couple questions for Deputy Police Chief Roger Hart.
Sure, please proceed.
I'm trying to see where you are. 1 second. Deputy Chief Hart, are you there?
Yes, good evening. My name is Roger Hart. I'm the Deputy Chief of Police.
Okay, great. Thank you. Still can't see you on my screen unless I go switch to active speaker, but I will. Lieutenant Carl, if you can mute your mic, that would be good too, please. So what's your role at the East Windsor Police Department?
I'm the Deputy Chief of Police, also the Operations Commander of the agency.
And do you also issue policy and what the department calls DODs or directives?
Yes, I do, in conjunction with the Chief of Police.
You heard Lieutenant Carl talk about, I'll strike that. Have you seen Lieutenant Carl's investigation report on this matter?
Yes, I have.
And did you see his conclusions regarding the policies and laws that he believed Sergeant Mcneese violated on this occasion?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So I have a few questions, and I don't want to take too long on it, but is there any doubt that Sergeant Mcneese was aware of these policies and directives that the department issued?
I don't believe there's any way that an officer at the East Windsor Police Department is not aware of our policies and procedures. As the lieutenant has mentioned, we have a system called Power DMS, and we've had it for some time now, where it tracks whether or not an individual signs off on a particular policy and procedure. So it's very easily, it's on all of our systems, so it's very easy for any officer to see any policies and procedures that we have in the agency.
And what's the difference between a sergeant, a corporal, and a patrol officer?
A sergeant and a corporal are levels of supervisory positions. A sergeant is one step above a corporal, and officer are our general officers who, for the most part, are assigned to patrol division. Some are assigned to other responsibilities in our agency.
So the role of a sergeant is to serve as a supervisor to the newer police officers and the younger folks in the ranks.
That's correct.
What's the impact on the organization when a sergeant disobeys direct orders?
When anybody disobeys a direct order from a supervisor, it has a very serious effect on the agency. It damages the credibility of command. But when a supervisor does it, it draws creates a huge crack in the order of an agency, as it has in this case.
Now, taking a look at Lieutenant Carl's report and his conclusions, he first concluded that Sergeant Mcneese violated the policy regarding insubordination. Do you agree that Sergeant Mcneese violated that policy on this occasion?
I do agree that he was insubordinate with the specific charge of 4.01, which is refusal to obey a legitimate order of a supervisor, whether oral, in writing, by hand signal, or other method known to both parties.
And that order was to be on alternative duty while he was awaiting his surgery. Is that right?
In part, yes, that is true. The order is also was violated. The written instructions to follow the alternate duty program, the verbal instructions by both the chief and I to avoid any field work that would result in putting himself or any other officer in harm's way.
Now, in his, did you read the interview between Lieutenant Carl and Sergeant Mcneese?
Yes, sir.
Did you see where Sergeant Mcneese stated in the interview that he felt that the alternative duty program was a gray area to him?
Yes, I did see that.
Do you have a copy of the policy in front of you, or a portion of the policy that's in Lieutenant Carl's report on page 3?
I do.
is there anything gray about the alternative duty program stating that the officer shall not perform the duties of a sworn police officer of the police department? Anything gray there?
No, sir.
Let's take a look at some of the other violations that Lieutenant Carl stated in his report occurred. Emergency vehicle operation and response. Do you agree with Lieutenant Carl that Sergeant Mcneese violated Chapter 41, Section 05 regarding emergency vehicle operation and response?
Yes, I do.
How so?
First paragraph of the section quoted here is that all personnel operating a department vehicle during non-emergency normal operations shall do so in a reasonable and safe manner. And it continues using caution and clear judgment. And when you're an emergency vehicle, you have to have your lights and siren on, not only per this policy, but per 14283. That statute is what gives us the authority to drive over the speed limit, to break certain rules of the road when our lights and siren are on. When our lights and siren are not on, we have the same responsibilities of every other person driving and operating on the highways.
So Sergeant Mcneese not only violated this policy, but he violated Connecticut General Statute Section 14-283.
That's correct, and possibly reckless driving.
State laws.
Correct.
Okay. What about the body-worn camera issue? You heard Lieutenant Carl say that the police accountability law is not yet effective on that issue. Well, what's the town's policy in that regard?
The policy is clear that when you're in the field and coming into interaction with people, you're going to wear your assigned body-worn camera. Sergeant Mcneese was assigned a body-worn camera. Presumably, he chose not to wear his body-worn camera because he was on alternative duty and wasn't going to come into contact with anybody while on alternative duty.
So that brings us to one of the final violations. I'm not going through all of them with you because they're in the report and the commission has the report. But Chapter 41, Section 20, wearing of uniforms, Sergeant Mcneese violated this policy as well because he wasn't in uniform at the time and he didn't have the necessary equipment at the time. Is that right?
That's correct. And then the recent change to the police accounting bill requires police officers to have, when they're in plain clothes, they have to have their badge displayed, but they also have to have some identification of their name. He failed to have any identification with his name on any of his exterior clothing. So that would be a clear violation. Not to mention not having some of the necessary equipment, like his portable radio, handcuffs, and so on.
All right. Now, we heard from Lieutenant Carl. He summarized his report. He answered questions detailing issues in his report. Is there anything you want to add regarding this matter for the police commission to consider at this time?
I think the lieutenant did a very good job with the report. I think the charges are all appropriate. The most serious charges are the insubordination charge. And now the commission, I just would like them to understand how serious insubordination is. I mean, frankly, if insubordination is allowed to go unchecked, management loses its complete ability to run an effective police department.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all I have, sir.
All right. Chairman Leach,
Yes.
before I turn it over to the union and Sergeant Mcneese to say what they want to say, I don't know if either you or any of the commission members have any questions of the members of the department that appeared before the commission today.
After reviewing all the evidence that I've seen thus far and everything here in the presentation, I don't have any questions at this time. Commissioners, Commissioner Long, Philippone, Mancuso?
I have no questions.
I have no questions.
I have one small question. Officer Sergeant Mcneese was off duty in the office, or supposed to be in the office. Did he overrule a shift supervisor by taking this upon himself?
Of the chief deputy and lieutenant, who's the best, who has the facts that can answer that question?
I'll take that. By the chain of command, Sergeant Mcneese outranks the corporal, but the corporal who was on duty that day is considered the shift commander because he's in charge of the field officers. So it technically wouldn't be overruling his order at all. He wouldn't even have known, and I don't believe he even knew until Sergeant Mcneese made it known over the radio that he had left the building. So there was no conflicting orders between the two or overruling of the two.
Okay, thank you.
That brings a question for me. Would that be fair to say that Sergeant Mcneese didn't inform any of the officers on duty, any of the patrol officers, that he had left the building?
I believe there's a radio transmission where he does say that he is getting on 91. The Lieutenant Carl could maybe speak to that in more detail.
Yeah, that is correct. I believe that all the on-duty officers knew exactly what was going on at the time. Sergeant Mcneese did let them know what his intentions were and where he was going, and he further asked for a backup unit to start his direction immediately.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Chairman?
Nothing for me, commissioners.
Okay.
Are we good?
Yeah, just one more. Lieutenant Carl, while he was reviewing the video, said, I don't know the exact words, by bringing the accused back to the state, he may have broken a state law. Did in fact he break this law or not?
Yes, he violated law by executing a warrant out of state and bringing the subject back to Connecticut.
It's federal law, Mr. Philippone. It's the Constitution provides, and the law that's promulgated under it, under Article 4, is the law that we're talking about regarding fugitives from justice and the ability for an officer to bring a person who's out of state, capture them, and bring them back without a warrant. It's federal law.
Okay, thank you again.
Okay.
That's all for me.
Thank you. Then, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to, this is a Loudermill hearing. Loudermill requires that the employee be given due process. Part of that due process is an opportunity to be heard. Obviously, this is not a formal proceeding with a lot of cross-examination, but we obviously must give the union its right to have Sergeant Mcneese put on whatever case he wants. After they're done, I do want to have Police Chief DeMarco address the commission once more with your permission. But with that, I'll turn it over to Sergeant Mcneese and his team for them to present whatever they want to present that's relevant, probative, and in line with a typical Loudermill hearing.
It sounds fine by me, Attorney.
Thank you.
Sergeant Mcneese, Attorney Rommel?
Sure. I have a few questions for some of the witnesses first that have already testified, and then we'll move on to some witnesses of our own. I will start with Deputy Chief Hart. Deputy Chief Hart, good evening.
Good evening.
There was testimony that there were some violations of law. There was no criminal investigation or criminal findings in this matter, correct?
That's correct.
Another question I have for you is, are you aware of anyone that violated the alternative duty policy within the past year?
No.
Isn't it true, Deputy Chief Hart, that on November 11th, 2020, you wrote an email to Sergeant Julia Knowles for violation of the alternative duty policy as she went to court without a uniform, took a police vehicle, was not on CAD, and the court actually called the department to complain that this individual went to court while they were on alternate duty and not in full police uniform?
I don't have that email in front of me. It doesn't, some of that sounds vaguely familiar, but some of it I've never heard of before.
Well, let me refresh your recollection. On November 11th, 2020,
I'm sorry, Attorney Rommel, what's the relevance of the other officers' actions as they are to the events on March 7th?
The chief and deputy have talked about the serious nature of violating the alternative duty policy. The last violation that was cited by the deputy chief was addressed via an email. And that is how serious the violation was taken 8 months ago. And I just want to clarify that is what occurred in another instance, in the other violation that we have before us.
And I'll just state, Chairman Leach, that we don't have any facts regarding that other incident. We don't know what she's raising. The deputy said he's never seen this email. The email is obviously hearsay. If we're going to try another case involving another officer that happened in November 2020, I don't think that's appropriate for a Laudermill hearing, which is about due process regarding this incident and this sergeant. So I would state that it's not relevant and not appropriate.
Part of due process is parity, and if I were to have the opportunity to refresh his recollection with an email that he sent, then that would be helpful for the commission to understand the department's position on the last violation of the policy. And again, I can provide that. I'm not sure how we provide via Zoom, but I can either scan it in and email it to the commission afterwards. But I'd like to read it into the record now to refresh the deputy's recollection. And I do notice the deputy is at his computer. So for your reference, deputy, you had sent that on November 11th, 2020 at 8:53 a.m.
To whom?
To Sergeant Julia Knowles, the chief, and two others that are unnamed. It just says +2 in the copy I have.
I think we may have lost Chairman. Oh, no, wait, here we go.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
May I read that into the record to present that?
There again, relevance. I mean, you've already stated that you believe this is something that has occurred. I'm at a miss as to how this is going to apply to the events on March 7th.
Chairman, I won't object. Chairman, I won't object. She wants to read it into the record. I won't object. In order, if she thinks it's probative on some issue relating to Sergeant Mcneese's conduct on March 7th, I don't object.
Okay, please proceed.
And to refresh your recollection, again, on November 11, 2020, 8:53 a.m. from Deputy Chief Hart to Sergeant Knowles. Sergeant Knowles, I may not have made myself clear on what is expected of you while you're on alternative duty. In your duty assignment letter, and it says you, so I'm just correcting that for typo. It must be a typo. I said you were to cover empty chairs and dispatch communications. What I meant was when you are working alternative duty, you will be one of the people sitting in front of dispatch console 1 or 2. The only exception would be if 2 fully trained dispatchers are on duty during your shift. From the communications room, you can assist with walk-ins or telephone complaints. If you are not working out of communications, you will assist with walk-ins and telephone complaints from your normal workspace. Yesterday, I saw you wearing your uniform jacket. I believe you left the parking lot driving an unmarked police vehicle while wearing your uniform jacket. There are several problems with this scenario. 1, you are out of uniform, see DOD 2204. 2, one could argue if your if you can wear a uniform jacket identifying you as a police officer while driving a police car, you have a duty to act as a police officer. If you are acting as a police officer in the field, why are you on alternative duty? 3, you were not on CAD and you went somewhere to do something, but there was no accountability. Moving forward, if you are not working in communications, have dispatch enter you into CAD so you can assist with walk-in calls or telephone complaint. If you have to leave the facility, you must notify dispatch so we can maintain accountability of what you are doing. The chief and I worked very hard to get the alternative duty program through the political system. Many agencies do not have alternative duty programs that would allow officers in your circumstance to continue to receive full pay without using leave time. The points I have raised above are brought to your attention to protect the integrity and the future of the alternative duty program. I trust you will make the necessary corrections. Thank you. Do you now recall that email after I've read that to you?
Yes, I do.
And that sergeant violated several provisions of the alternative duty program?
I think the email is pretty clear as to what my instructions were to her. The main objective and the main reason for that email was the first part of it where she was not in dispatch. The reason for her alternative duty status it shouldn't be discussed here, but she was very newly to the alternative duty program, and I wanted her assigned to dispatch. So that was the main reason for the email. I didn't understand why she was leaving the building, and she shouldn't have been wearing a uniform coat over her clothes. I didn't know what she was doing.
So Deputy Chief, she violated the alternative duty program in several areas, correct?
I'm going to object. We don't have any of the evidence regarding this incident. The email itself, which I don't have a copy of, she's reading from something I don't even have, says he was clarifying his orders. There was no direct order. It was a clarification email. And this is now going far beyond the Loudermill hearing, where this is about Sergeant Mcneese's conduct, not another officer's conduct that happened in November that I don't even have any evidence of. Zero.
Very surely relevant, and I don't think the attorney has evidence if the deputy remembers the incident. And my question is, were there violations here, and was there any corrective action beyond the email taken for those violations?
That's a personnel matter involving another officer. I'm going to object to this in its totality.
It's public record, public employee.
Well, make a FOIA request. Chairman, I ask that we move on from this.
I'm going to sustain your objection, Attorney Hawkslad. There again, this is what we're talking about here is the actions of March 7th. The actions of the officer last year are not I don't see the relevance here. We're getting off into the weeds where we should be talking about this event.
Commissioner, what I'm stating here is that the town has gone to great lengths to say how the policies are available. The deputy chief himself testified that policies are available to everyone anytime, and deputy knows of prior violation, and the action taken was an email, and I would like that on the record.
Okay, you've stated so. It's on the record.
Okay, I have no more questions for Deputy Chief Hart. I have some questions for Lieutenant Carl.
Okay.
Good evening, Lieutenant.
Good evening.
And you stated the body camera law was not in effect yet. When does that come into effect?
I believe we're ahead of time, and I think it's January 1 of 2022.
In progress. There's a
just 1 second, Attorney Rommel. I just want to remind any members of the public to mute themselves so the noise in your background doesn't interfere with the proceedings. Thank you. Go ahead.
There was some testimony by yourself as well as others regarding the nature of the crime in which the warrant that the suspect had. That warrant was for a violation of protective order, correct?
Correct.
And that's a felony?
Correct.
And you mentioned and a felony related to a domestic incident.
Correct.
And you mentioned that motor vehicle stops are of some of the most dangerous, I'm paraphrasing your words, some of the most dangerous contexts that police officers have. Do domestics fall in that category as well? It's one of the most dangerous situations a police officer could come upon?
Yes, they do.
And you also mentioned that the sergeant referred to an old memo from the state's attorney's office about hot pursuits over state lines. Are you familiar with that memo?
Yes, he read it to me, and I was vaguely familiar. Yes.
Are you familiar that memo made a distinction with a pursuit over a hot pursuit over a state line versus a suspect over a state line that was caught many days later?
I believe
I don't
so, yes.
understand the question. It's a vague question. I don't understand what that means.
I'm not sure if it's important for the attorney or the commission to understand it.
Well, I'll let Mr.
I'm sorry, can you clarify what you're asking?
He spoke about Mcneese's understanding with hot pursuits over state line. Correct? And
Are you asking?
Sorry.
Were you asking me a question?
Yes, you said you were vaguely familiar with this older memoranda about hot pursuits over state lines.
Correct.
Do you know, or did you recollect if that memoranda differentiated how state lines are treated when it's a hot pursuit as compared to other situations?
I don't, and that's why I was very specific. It was affecting a warrant that we already had. I didn't really address the hot pursuit. It was Sergeant Mcneese told the suspect in Massachusetts, it doesn't matter what just happened now. We have a warrant for your arrest. So thus far, he effected the arrest in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and that was I was referring to. That would require a fugitive justice law for him to be taken into custody in Massachusetts and not brought back to Connecticut. And that's what my focus was on.
Okay, and you stated after you had the discussion with Mcneese, he clarified, I think your words were, he clarified his position and had more of an understanding about state lines.
Yes.
And you stated that you had a lot of your interview revolved around his mindset. And some of his mindset was his accountability to his other patrol officers.
Correct.
Did he also have a concern for public safety?
Yes, he did.
And in the interview, he stated, I thought about it and I thought about it, and I was just unwilling to let that guy get away, knowing that he could go back and harm the person at another time. Do you recall that?
I do.
And do you think he expressed a genuine concern for the safety of the individual?
The victim in this?
Yes, the victim.
Yes, I do.
How long have you known Sergeant Mcneese?
16 years.
And how did you first meet him?
I believe he came to us as a lateral police officer, and I conducted his background investigation for employment.
And when you say 16 years, you mean his entire employment you've known him?
Employment here at the East Windsor Police Department. I did not know him prior to working here.
And throughout, are you familiar with his reputation as an officer in the East Windsor Police Department?
I'm going to object. If character evidence plays a role in whether or not Sergeant Mcneese violated code, law, directives, that's a subject for the courts. This is a Loudermill hearing. His character, his reputation is not relevant. It's his behavior. What he did on March 7th, that's what's relevant.
Well, as you know, Commissioner, this is our opportunity to present our case, and this case actually does not go to the courts. We would go to arbitration. And if we were in other jurisdictions, the chief and the deputy chief are familiar with the sergeant, and they're familiar with his reputation. Right now, the has a picture of the incident without the familiarity. I would ask to allow the lieutenant limited character evidence. It is directly relevant to testimony by the deputy stating that the effect this has on the police department.
I'll entertain the idea, so long as we don't get off in weeds again, please.
And to repeat my question, are you familiar with his reputation as a sergeant and officer in the East Windsor Police Department?
Yeah, I believe I am. I can't speak to what everybody thinks about Sergeant Mcneese. I know what I believe, and I believe that his reputation in the police department is one of that he's thorough and he's diligent officer or sergeant.
And did you in fact endorse him for any special positions?
Yes, I have.
Can you tell me about that?
I've endorsed him for negotiator on the Crest team. It's a regional tactical unit. He's a negotiator. I've endorsed him for a liaison position with the state auto theft unit, and I've endorsed him for several years on a human trafficking task force, most recently one that transitioned over to the FBI.
And has he been successful in those positions you've endorsed him in?
He has been very successful.
And do you have any knowledge if this incident has changed his reputation among his peers?
I don't. I didn't discuss this incident with too many people, but I don't think it has changed their opinion of him. I have not heard that it has.
And is he still someone that you would endorse for positions like you have?
Based on this specific incident, I don't believe so. I think this was a complete lack of judgment and leadership ability.
And this lack of judgment and leadership ability, have you ever seen that from him in any other situation, or would you characterize this as a lapse of judgment?
I have personally not have been involved in this lack of. I have personally not been involved in that with him in my experiences.
Thank you. I'm going to next have,
Well, actually, if you're done with Lieutenant Carl, I have a couple follow-up questions based on your question. So, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, please proceed.
I'll keep it very, very brief. I'm just going to cover the last two since she introduced Sergeant Reimer's reputation. First, does he have a reputation as being a cowboy who will at times exceed what the normal procedures are for a police department in East Windsor?
But I stated before, he's thorough and diligent, and I believe he has a reputation of following through things with himself, by himself, or he'll follow through more diligently than other officers or supervisors.
Well, in fact, wasn't there two occasions at the Mardi Gras strip joint where Sergeant Mcneese engaged in active duty when he should not have been in active duty and got smashed in the head by a patron on one occasion? Are you aware of that?
An incident that is over 10 years old in which he faced no disciplinary action, none.
Reputation and character. That's what you brought up.
2007.
All right, let's go to 2020. I'll bring it to last year. Didn't he go to the Mardi Gras and permit the Mardi Gras to open during COVID without the police chief, without the building inspector, without the first selectman permitting?
Objection.
Matt knows the answer to this.
So
I'm going to let the question go.
Chairman,
Continue.
she opened the door to reputation and character.
Exactly. So continue, please.
Bringing up things that he was not disciplined for. Clearly, he would have disciplinary history if there were salacious events in his past. He has none. None.
Attorney Rommel, you raised the issue of his reputation. You raised the issue of the character. When you do that, you know as well as I do that reputation and character can be impeached by bad acts, right? That's the law. And that's what I'm doing. So if you didn't want the bad acts of your client to be raised, you should not have raised his reputation and character in the first place.
Attorney
So
Hawk,
let's just stick.
lads, you are bringing up stale incidences that he was not disciplined for. So it actually is beneficial for the union to know that these incidences, he has no discipline in his file, none.
In 2020, Lieutenant Carl, are you aware of Sergeant Mcneese's conduct in approving the Mardi Gras to open up against COVID protocols and town policy? Are you aware of that?
I am aware of it. The actual details, I would have to defer to either the chief or the deputy chief.
Okay. And during your interview of Sergeant Mcneese on this occasion, when you asked him how he would have apprehended the suspect if the suspect would have become violent, what did he say? Well, how would he have behaved?
I asked him if he thought he had put anybody in danger, and he indicated no, he felt that he was fine, and that if need be, he would fight to the death.
Fight to the death. That's what he would have done on this occasion. That's what he said?
I believe that's
Is that
in
right?
I believe that's in his transmittal, yes.
So, notwithstanding the fact that your honest belief is that he was thorough and diligent, and I applaud you for being honest, you still determined that he violated all of these directives and laws that you already described, right?
Correct.
Now, Attorney Rommel asked you about lack of judgment and leadership. Judgment and leadership, aren't those two key criteria of a sergeant?
Yes, they are.
No question that said lack of judgment and leadership in my question.
I wrote it down. He responded to a question regarding his judgment and leadership were questioned. He said, I don't know if he used the word lack, but judgment and leadership were questioned. You remember that response, Lieutenant Carl?
Yes, I do.
Sergeants are leaders, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
In fact, sergeants are supposed to be role models, aren't they?
Correct.
Sergeants are supposed to be better than the rest of the officers that look up to them, aren't they?
Correct. The role of a sergeant is to make sure that the officers adhere to the policies and the procedures of the police department, and that they execute them and secure the protection of the citizens we serve.
But in your honest opinion, even though you respect him as being thorough and diligent, and you endorsed him for the Crest Team, FBI, and other awards, you felt he lacked these two criteria of judgment and leadership, right?
Yeah, I feel that, with the police department's reputation and the authority that we have, it's derived from policy and oversight. And the trust and legitimacy of the community is in the hands of the police department. And we only have success when we have that. That's derived from policy and oversight, and supervisors, specifically sergeants, have to adhere to policy and oversight in this. So this specific incident that I was charged with investigating, I found that there was a failure in that policy and oversight.
Okay. I don't have anything further for Lieutenant Carl. Thank you.
I have a few follow-up questions. Lieutenant Carl, how long was this incident?
About 11 minutes.
And the sergeant's anniversary date is this month, correct?
I believe it is, yes.
And in the next couple of weeks, the sergeant would have served 17 years on the East Windsor Police Department.
Correct.
And this entire incident we're talking about is 11 minutes.
That is correct.
Nothing further.
I have just one more question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
How long does it take, Lieutenant Carl, how long does it take to pull a trigger on a gun?
Less than a second.
How many careers,
Objection.
decade-long careers,
No
are
gun-
ruined by a mistaken pull trigger on a gun?
I wouldn't be able to answer that, but there are.
Why Attorney Hawks Lads is allowed more leeway than the union in this irrelevant prejudicial questioning.
I'm just giving you the same hypothetical in response to your question about an 11-minute incident
It's not a
of poor
hypothetical.
judgment.
I had facts. This was not a hypothetical. It was
We
11.
can read the newspaper every day, Attorney Rommel. Every day we can read about cowboys going loose. Every day
You want to
for
read
11 minutes or shorter.
We're here on a real incident. So this is
All
an
right.
11-minute incident and a 17-year decorated sergeant.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'm done with my questioning of Lieutenant Carl.
Attorney Rommel, anything further?
Sergeant Mcneese is going to address the commission, followed by the union addressing the commission.
Please proceed.
Chief DeMarco, Deputy Chief Hart, East Windsor Police Commission, Lieutenant Matt Carl, Attorney Hawkslad. I want to thank you all for being here this evening and taking the time to review this matter. I apologize that you have to devote precious time and energy on this incident. I hope that you will consider the totality of circumstances in this matter. I've been a police officer in East Windsor, Connecticut for, it'll be 17 years on June 21st. And I've been a police officer in the state of Connecticut for 21 years. I've gladly sacrificed weekends, holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, special occasions, so I could serve and protect the residents of East Windsor. Law enforcement has been my chosen career, and I have dedicated my life to upholding the law and helping others. I really believe that I was born to be a police officer, and the role of guardian and protector meshes with my identity. I've tried to complete every task that has ever been given to me to the best of my ability. I've been successful in many endeavors, but in the ever-changing police world, you learn something new every single day. I've received many commendations and accolades, but probably my favorite part of the job is the little personal connections and lives that I have touched along the way. The little things that nobody ever sees, like the family that I adopted after their son committed suicide on Christmas Eve, or the elderly female that I paid for her gas when she thought she had already paid the attendant, and the children that I used to entertain with my canine partner, Mac, and read books to at the elementary school. Those are the little moments that I cherish the most in my career. I have saved lives on more than one occasion, and I don't think you can ever put a price on a person's life. But the accomplishments that I remember most are the simple acts that touch people's lives. I have also learned that the world is constantly changing. It's a constantly changing, unpredictable place, and nobody is infallible. We all make mistakes because we are all human. The incident that we are discussing here this evening was certainly a mistake, and I'm terribly sorry for making an error in judgment. I clearly understood that the chief had ordered me to alternative duty, and I was not on patrol that evening. When I heard the domestic violence incident going down, and that we had a reliable witness, the aunt of the victim, that provided a full description of the vehicle, including the Massachusetts plate, and the witness was going to continue to follow the vehicle, I went to dispatch to inquire if we had any patrol units that were available to make the motor vehicle stop. When dispatch said that all the units were in Broadbrook and the vehicle was approaching I-91, I made a timely decision in which I believed that the suspect, who had already had a felony violation of protective order arrest warrant for the same type of event, posed a danger to the victim, and that that danger outweighed my alternative duty restriction. But I know now that this call was not mine to be made. At this time, I believed that the suspect needed to be stopped. There was no premeditation on my part to disobey the chief's order. I do not have a history of disobeying orders, and I do respect the chain of command. I simply acted because I believed I simply acted because I believed it was for the greater good of the community and the greater good of the victim. I have never done anything with malice in my heart, and this was simply a gut instinct of mine to not let the bad guy get away. I never imagined that I would be in this position right now, facing these consequences, because at the time, I thought I was doing the right thing. I am deeply sorry for the way this has turned out. I know that I still have much to offer the town of East Windsor. I have a great deal of experience that I believe can be used in the field and shared with the up-and-coming officers in the department. I love what I do as a police officer and sergeant, and I especially love the connections that I have made with the East Windsor community. I am hoping that you see past this error in judgment and realize that I am only human and I made a mistake. I would also like you to consider that I have made many good decisions and taken heroic actions that are not being highlighted right now. I have many examples that I am proud of in which I have saved lives, recovered property, and provided invaluable services to the community. I honestly believe that my track record speaks for itself, and I am certainly capable of making good, informed decisions based on my experience and the future. I hope that each one of you will consider the human being behind the police officer or the person behind the badge. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant.
And if you're ready, I want to make a statement.
Yes. I want to ask the chairman whether I'll be able to ask Sergeant Mcneese a couple of questions, either now or when the union is done presenting Sergeant Reimer's statement.
It's our position that this is a Laudermill hearing. The time for questions was at the interview. Mcneese this is our presentation, and he has presented his case. I don't see any leeway for the attorney to now ask him questions. The facts, we have the facts of the case. He did not dispute the facts of the case. There are no questions to be asked in this matter.
I'm satisfied with the attorney's statement in that regard.
Attorney Rommel, please proceed.
Thank you. Sergeant David Mcneese has been an officer in this police department for almost 17 years. Prior to this, he served as a police officer for 4 years at Southern Connecticut State University. He has over 21 years of police experience. However, the sergeant is more than just a sergeant with decades of experience and no disciplinary history. This is a supervisor who has been an asset and a role model to the East Windsor Police Department and to the community at large. His many assignments and roles in task forces demonstrate some of the contributions he has made as a member of the department. He is on the Human Trafficking Task Force as a liaison to the FBI and has been involved in this capacity for almost 6 years, approximately 6 years. He has been on the Auto Theft Task Force for approximately 7 years and the Metro Traffic Task Force for approximately 5 years. Additionally, he has been a part of the Capital Region Emergency Services Team, more commonly known as the SWAT team, for approximately 15 years and has served as a negotiator and a team leader in this regard. Mcneese has also received many awards and commendations throughout his tenure, including the following. This year, February 2nd, 2021, he received a letter of thanks for his assistance with a multiple jurisdictional house fire from the fire department. February 5th, 2019, he received recognition from Chief DeMarco for his performance in the transition to the next-gen CAD and RMS system. He received 2 additional award days for that. July 27th, 2015, he received a Police Commendation Award for work with Police K-9 and a Police Commendation Award is for clearly excelling in the performance of his duties during a significant event or difficult police situation which distinguishes him from his peers. May 20, 2010, he received a letter from Chief DeMarco commending the arrest of 2 suspects during a car burglary. July 19, 2007, he received performance recognition from a sergeant for apprehension of 2 individuals conducting burglaries at a body shop. March 15, 2007, he received a police commendation award for the tracking and apprehension of 2 suspects. January 19, 2006, another police commendation award for his role in a suicide homicide investigation in conjunction with New Haven Police Department. March 31st, 2006, performance recognition for locating and arresting a suspect in a stolen car. March 30th, 2007, a performance recognition regarding an assault at a Mardi Gras with and apprehended a suspect that was armed. November 9th, 2008, police commendation award for a canine tracking that went into Enfield of a suspect. December 26, 2005, performance recognition from a sergeant for arrest of a burglary suspect. August 17, 2005, a performance recognition for an assault that occurred in Windsor Locks. He located the involved vehicle. June 2nd, 2005, for a stolen motor vehicle recovery and arrest and excellent performance. December 2nd, 2004, performance recognition for the investigation of a serious assault between 2 brothers. Council 4 represents over 30 police departments, and we represent a lot of disciplinary cases. And I have a lot of officers where I've represented that do not have anything in their file after 20 years of service. On the night of the incident, Mcneese was on light duty, known to the East Windsor Police Department as alternative duty from a workers' compensation injury. He was injured on duty while performing his duties as a sergeant for the East Windsor Police Department. As you can see from the record before you, he tried to work through his injury to continue to serve the citizens despite the obvious pain he was experiencing. However, after he could no longer do this, there was an agreement with the town to work alternative duty. There is no question that he did violate the policy and made a mistake when he left his assignment to pursue a known suspect in a domestic case. He admits this mistake and deeply regrets this decision. However, you cannot look at this incident in a vacuum. I urge you to look at his intent and his entire career when you make a decision. First time I spoke with Mcneese about this incident, he repeated a sentiment that you heard from him that is in the transcript, and what he had said to me is, I'm a cop's cop, I was born a cop, I was always meant to be a cop. This is reflected on page 17 of his interview. That night he acted out of this deeply ingrained mindset, and his only thought was to get the bad guy. As you can see from his interview and from the facts and the documents before you, he stated there were no other officers present, no one else was in the area. He felt that the only way to ensure public safety in this moment was if he were to be the one to catch him. Again, the suspect in this case was accused of violating a protective order. This is a felony. Domestics are one of the most dangerous crimes out there. As is also evident, he knew there would be consequences, but in his mind at the time, he did not think the department would look at his actions in the extreme light that they did, as he caught the bad guy, he caught the felon, he preserved public safety. He thought that the consequences would be that he would no longer be able to be on light duty. He did not anticipate any severe disciplinary consequences, as he did not have any ill intent and he was able to restore order. And again, I wanted to point out this is not the first officer accused of violating the alternative duty policy. Just last year, another sergeant, which we discussed, was on alternative duty. There was a complaint made, and then the officer, the sergeant, was given an email to correct her actions to do better next time. I would ask you to take in consideration the totality of the circumstances and not let this one night, these 11 minutes, this one bad judgment call that resulted in the apprehension of the suspect define this officer's career. This officer saved lives. He has helped the community. He has risen to the top, whereas in a world where it's difficult to be a police officer. Again, we represent many police officers, and police are in the most trying times in history. Cities, municipalities, states, and nationwide, we're fighting to get good officers that are committed to the job, officers like Mcneese that are there for the long term and want to do the right thing and want to serve the public. I would ask that you look at this sergeant's career, and if you find disciplinary is necessary, to make it minimal, as this officer has learned his lesson. This is not a mistake that will be repeated. He will continue to be an asset and a role model to the department and the community, as he has done for almost 2 decades.
Thank you, Attorney Rommel. Is there anything further from the PD union representative, or?
The union does not have anything further.
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask that I could revisit for a moment Police Chief DeMarco for a couple of final words on behalf of the department, if you would be so inclined.
Yes, please proceed.
Chief.
Let me get it off mute, of course. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So as I look at it and consider the situation, and I've been listening very carefully here tonight, and I was looking for contrition, and what I heard was that the department considered this in an extreme light. It seems like deflection and that blame is being settled upon us. I fully understand that Sergeant Dave Mcneese is considered to be a good guy, and he's a recipient of department recognition and awards, and that he's performed some very good police work over the last 16 years, nearly 17 now. And I know this situation's hard. It's hard for our town. It's hard for the entire police department, but we're an accredited professional police department. He was given a direct order, and it wasn't gray. We're dedicated to, and we practice the tenets of 21st century policing. We value community trust and legitimacy. So we cannot just overlook Sergeant Mcneese's actions on that March 7th, where he placed himself self-admittedly in a dangerous situation. We can't overlook the seriousness of those actions and the severeness of the policy violations. He did commit insubordination, and we cannot ignore that really poor decision-making that he made that night. Or his disturbing comments. We talked about some pages in his statement, and in one of the pages he talks about wiggle room in policy. We can't forget that he did all of this as a supervisor, and therefore we must be concerned that there's a very real future risk that poses. So I would have the commission consider all of that when they go into deliberation.
All right. Mr. Chairman, if the union has nothing further, I don't have anything further. I would ask that that the commission, I'm sorry.
I just have a couple you said if the union has nothing further. I just had a couple further comments. I just wanted to make clear, because I'm not sure if our statements were heard based on the chief's statements, that there was an admission of guilt, there was an apology for actions, and there was absolutely no deflection of responsibility. He is taking responsibility for his actions, and I just want to make sure that that's conveyed.
Well stated, thank you.
At this time, then, I have nothing further. And Attorney Rommel, do you have anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay.
Okay. At this point, I would like to enter into an executive session. If we could get a motion to go into executive session with the town attorney and all the commission members.
I'll make a motion. We go into executive session with the town attorney and all the commission members.
I'll second it.
Moved by Commissioner Philippone, seconded by Commissioner Mancuso. All those in favor? Commissioner Long? Commissioner Mancuso?
Aye.
Commissioner Philippone?
Aye.
And have we got Commissioner Long still with us?
Aye. I
There
was
we go.
muted.
Okay. Chief, can you put us in a room, please?
All right, everybody stand by. This could get ugly.
Recording in progress. Is Mitch the pitch in tonight?
Did Bob make it?
Am I in, Chief?
Yep.
There you are.
Is my PC also logged on?
Let's see.
As set me up as co-host again on the PC.
It says co-host.
There you go.
Now they both have it.
Okay. So I'll call the meeting back to order at 9:51.
That one's about 25 to 20. Why 25? 21. 20 is so.
There we go. Just going through and muting a few members. And could I remind all the attendees to this meeting to please mute your microphones? And commissioners, have we reached a decision?
Yes, we have. I'd like to move to terminate Sergeant Dave Mcneese from the East Windsor Police Department effective immediately.
And I'm going to second that motion.
So I've got a motion from Commissioner Philippone and a second from Commissioner Mancuso. Discussion. So I'll start. All the commissioners deliberated on this, and we recognize Sergeant McNeese's nearly 17 years of service to the town and the accolades that he's earned. But there are major concerns that we've discussed, and the reasoning that we've reached this determination. The seriousness of the actions and the seriousness of the charges that have been brought by the administration, and all the evidence of the investigation, I believe is what's led us to this point.
Well, I found this, the thing that bothered me the most was the breach of chain of command. I'm pretty strong on that. I believe it does create a lack of trust within the organization. There was a lack of safety for the public and the other officers involved with the pursuit and the way it was carried out. No lights, no personal equipment, protective equipment. And my main concern is it can happen again. Whatever made it happen on March 6th, I think the date was 7th. It could happen again. And I don't want to put the town under that risk and face that potential liability because fortunately there were no lives involved in this action, but it could in the future. And I feel very strong about my opinion.
Thanks, Commissioner Philippone. Any other comments?
I would just say that I concur with Commissioner Philippone. He hit the points that we discussed at length.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Commissioner Philippone.
I'm in favor of my motion. I'm not sure whether that's a yes or
Aye.
aye.
Commissioner Long.
Aye.
Commissioner Mancuso.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask that a motion to conclude the disciplinary hearing take place and just acknowledge to the union and Sergeant Mcneese that he will receive written notice of this decision.
Right. Commissioners, a motion to conclude the hearing?
Just
I
the
will make
disciplinary
a-
hearing, not your public meeting.
Right.
I will make a motion to end the disciplinary hearing.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, Commissioner Philippone.
You're on mute.
Commissioner Long.
Aye.
Commissioner Mancuso.
Aye.
Has Commissioner Philippone come back for an aye?
Yeah, I didn't hear what was going on. There was too much noise coming through.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was, the motion was to conclude the hearing portion of our meeting.
Okay, aye.
And can I reach, I'm hoping you can hear me, Sergeant Mcneese and Attorney Rommel, you will be receiving written notification of our determination within the next day, I would imagine. And that concludes the hearing. Well, now, as item agenda number 3B, which was public comments. I know we have many members of the public here that would like to be heard. Given the number of people that are in attendance, I would ask that you please keep your comments short. If we can keep it under a minute, I would appreciate it. And I'm trying to find a spot where I can find somebody raising their hand. Chief, have you got the ability to I'm trying to see if I've got anybody that would like to comment in the public comment section here. And on my screen, I don't see any way to do so.
You have a chat function, sir. You can have them say something in chat.
Ah, here we go.
If I could clarify, Chairman, there's also, everybody has a reaction button. And if they could raise their hand in the reaction, then you'll be able to see that hand. Once you recognize them, then they can remove their hand.
Okay. When I recognize you, please state your name and address for the record, please. I will now recognize Jim Bancroft.
Hi, Jim Bancroft, 60 Norton Road, Broadbrook section of town. I just want to speak, I missed the first part of the meeting, but I just wanted to say that the only thing you guys have done today is weaken the community. week in the police department. Absolutely appalled by the police commission's decision. And you can guarantee none of you will have my vote next term. Have a good night.
Thank you for your input. I'm looking for one more, and I see a notification for one.
Chief Barton has raised his hand.
Chief Barton, you're unmuted.
Okay, Chief James Barton from the Warehouse Point Fire District. I also 45-year resident of East Windsor. I've been the fire chief for the last 16 years. I've worked hand in hand with Sergeant Mcneese on every incident, to car accidents, to fires, to overdoses, to everything that we go to. Every decision that he makes, he has to make in a split decision. Every decision I make, I have to make in a split decision. It's easy to make a decision from behind the desk. I'm appalled at this decision. He made a mistake. He realized he made a mistake. And to echo Jim Bancroft's, you guys weakened the police department tonight as commissioners. You're not looking out for the better interests of the town. The only thing you did was cost us a lot of money tonight. And I hope you guys are proud of yourselves.
Thanks, Jim. Is there any other public comments?
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Name and address?
No, because they didn't unmute us, I don't think.
Rich Paradise, 45 Main Street, Broadbrook. I'm a member of the fire department. And I agree with the two chiefs there. You guys you're losing our votes here. Was not right. Because he's a good guy. Thank you.
For your input. Let's see, here we go.
Oh.
David Zalea, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your name. Name and address, please.
Dave Zelaya, 28 Newberry Road, member of Broadbrook Fire Department for now 8 years. I agree. It was a poor choice, at least on the termination. He did agree on wrongdoing. I think at least at a minimum, it should have maybe been a demotion, but he's been a great asset to the police department. And a termination, I think, was well overdone for what he did. He admitted fault. He took blame that he did wrong. But I don't agree with the terminations. It was definitely a poor choice. I think at least it should have been maybe a demotion, but definitely not a termination.
Thanks for your input.
There you go.
Any more public comments? Karen Paradise. Name and address, please.
Karen Paradise, also 45 Main Street in Broadbrook. Also a member of the Broadbrook Fire Department. And I'm greatly saddened at your actions tonight. Officer Mcneese is a great, great asset to this town. And you've really done an injustice here. He really was an asset to this town, and you just crushed the whole police department. And you've thanks for your
Any other comments? Oh, seeing none, we'll move on with the agenda. Budget and expenditure. Police Department monthly billing for, as of June 9th. Commissioners, have we got a motion for Police Department billing as of June 9th?
Make a motion to approve the monthly billing of $20,609.92 as of June 9th, 2021.
I'll second that motion.
Motion from Philippone, second by Long. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of accepting the Police Department monthly billing of June 9th for $20,609.92. Commissioner Philippone.
Aye.
Commissioner Long.
Aye.
Commissioner Mancuso.
Aye.
Unanimous. Police Department financial statement as of 6/4 with a balance of $401,369.42.
I'll make a motion to accept that.
Second.
Motion by Long, second by Philippone. Any discussion?
Looks good. That's the only thing I could say.
Actually, I'm beginning to wonder if we're really going to make it to the end of the year.
Got 3 weeks left.
Yeah, I suppose. We'll see what comes through on billing for next month. I know we've got a lot of stuff that's hanging, so. Anyway, any more discussion? All those in favor, Commissioner Philippone.
Aye.
Commissioner Long.
Aye.
Commissioner Mancuso.
Aye.
Unanimous again. Police Commission monthly billing for 5/3 for $125.
I'll make a motion to approve the Police Commission budget of May 31st with a balance of, or for $125, sorry. Monthly billing.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Philippone, seconded by Long. Thank you, Commissioner Philippone, for the correction on the date. That was 5/31. Any discussion? All those in favor, Commissioner Philippone.
Aye.
Commissioner Long.
Aye.
Commissioner Mancuso.
Aye.
And last item on budget expenditures was Police Commission financial statement as of 5/31 with a balance of 425 even, or I'm sorry, 475 to correct myself.
I'll make the motion, approve the financial statement of the Police Commission, 5/31/2021, the balance of $475.
I'll second.
By Philippone, seconded by Mancuso. Any discussion? All those in favor, Commissioner Philippone,
Aye.
Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Mancuso.
Aye.
Unanimous again. Unfinished business, I have nothing. Traffic Authority, nothing. New business, nothing.
Real quick, sir.
Communications. I'm sorry?
Real quick,
Almost
Traffic
blew by.
Authority.
Yes.
This is Chief DeMarco. I sent your airplane sign request to the DPW. They have the official request. They're coming up with a sign. They're gonna put one on both sides of the airport.
Ah, okay. Thank you for the update. New business, we had none. Communications, anything from the commissioners or the chief or deputy?
Was a chief's monthly report sent out? Because I.
There was not one in there due to the busyness of the week.
Oh, okay.
I have nothing.
Which brings us to monthly reports. Chief, you have nothing. Commission members, anything for monthly report? No? Okay. And that moves us to executive session to include the chief and deputy. Do we need Lieutenant Carl? Chief?
I believe so, might as well.
Okay.
And I'll try to do a breakout room here.
Okay, so need a motion to go into an executive session for security and personnel matters to include the chief, deputy, and lieutenant.
I'll make the motion to go to executive session.
At 10:12. Motion made by Long, seconded by Philippone. All those in favor, Commissioner Philippone.
Aye.
Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Mancuso.
Aye.
Great. We'll enter executive session. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. And thank you, Judy.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night, Judy.
Thank you.
All right, I'll make a motion to end the executive meeting at 10:27.
So a motion to adjourn at 10:27.
Adjourn, there you go.
We have
I'll
a second.
second. I'll second it.
Seconded by Ray. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good night.
Very good, gentlemen.
Good
Have a
night,
good
all.
night.
Have a good rest of the week.